Welcome and thank you for joining us yet again on Malaïka, the TV show for African Christian women. Please stay with us for today's episode. So today, as we talk about the image of the Black African woman, I'm joined by my beautiful co-hosts. Mama Audrey, thank you so much for being with us today.
Always blessed to be on that show.
And we have as well Auntie Zots and Jackie with us. And we also have a very special guest that you will get to meet later on in the show. So as Black women, there's such a big expectation on what is needed of us. And I hope today we can be able to break it down to see what it's really about. But before we get into the major details, we'll hear Jackie's overview. Jackie, we Black women. They say black and proud, but pride can come before a fall, hey?
Yes, so the Black African woman. What does it mean to be a Black African woman? So many definitions around the world. But firstly, I'll start with what it is to be a stereotype.
Okay.
Stereotype, it's a set of ideas that people have about something, usually something that's not right.
Exactly.
And then we have gender, because we're talking about women. Okay. This is a practice of giving one individual woman the characteristic of the whole gender, of what every woman would be that's ascribed to that individual woman. Yeah. And then we have gender stereotype, racial stereotyping, my mistake. It's a stereotyping of the African in general. These stereotypings can go in regards to how you look. For example, we all look the same. Or, for example, we all can dance, which is not true.
I don't think so.
Can sing.
There's some people with two left
feet. Some do have two left feet, I must admit. And then you have the traditional sense of an African woman.
Yes.
You have, she's a wife, she's a mother, she's a cook, she's a cleaner, she's a servant, she's an educator, she's a nurse, she's a shopper.
Ooh,
she has all
endless
these
list.
things. Yeah. That is the African woman. But generalizations can be very dangerous as well. Because if we see, it's not easy to make general statements about Africa because Africa is huge. Yeah. I read an article, it was from a blogger, and she wrote about Black African women, and this is what she had to say. She said, usually in people's minds, when they think about a Black African woman, they think automatically, they think of someone who needs help. She's pitiful. This pitiful Black African woman, she needs help. And the mainstream, this is what people actually believe. It becomes the other. You know, she's not the normal, she's the other. Yeah. There's a BBC article, and it celebrates the modern African woman now. Okay. And it talks about African magazines. And in these African magazines, they talk about, it's all glamour, very, very glossy magazines. And they have the woman who's strong and powerful. She's proud of her heritage. And they have words like Afro chic, that sounds good, doesn't it?
Yes,
Afro chic.
Yes,
and Africa rising.
Yeah.
Must be a song, Mama Audrey can write a song about that. These magazines are printed in Europe, and because there's so many Africans abroad, they're marketed abroad and they're very popular. I read about a photographer. She's half Ivorian and half Spanish, and she did a series of photographs, and they were called Resilience. From her background. And she said she was inspired by women who were told they're not real Africans. In some points, I've actually been told I'm not a real African. But once I open my mouth and I have the African language coming up, you're a sister! Honestly, that has happened to me. You're actually one of us.
Exactly.
I can't talk about you behind my back. I understand the lingo.
Yeah.
And so, influences also. We have African, the language. This is also part of what makes one African. You have a language, which is a big thing. You have dress, you have attitude, and you have habits, which actually make one African. I think you have to be an African to actually understand what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I cannot understand.
You don't understand?
No, Mama.
We'll fill you in.
After the show, we'll talk. Okay, then we have a model called Ajuma. She's a beautiful Kenyan model. And this is what she said. She said her beauty was not celebrated in Kenya at all. But when she went to the USA and in Europe, they saw her as this amazingly beautiful woman, who she actually is. And she quotes and she says, I have never attempted to change my skin. I am natural. And she's a top model now. To end, I will give a few names of some personalities that are African, who are well known. We have from Mozambique, Maria Mtola. You know the runner?
Yes, the athlete.
She's a sprinter. She goes fast.
Yeah.
She's called, I think, the Express, Maputo Express. She's very fast. She's not the typical image of an African woman, but she is an African woman. And then we have the Nigerian author. She's called Chimamanda Adichie.
Yes.
Sorry, my mistake. Adichie. And she writes awesome books. And people read her worldwide. And then from Zimbabwe, Kirsty Coventry.
Oh,
You know what
yes.
she does?
Swimmer.
She's a swimmer, exactly.
And she's white.
And she's white, but she's an African woman.
An African woman.
She represents African women.
Yeah.
So that ends my overview for you this morning.
Thank you so much, Jackie. That was an interesting, but also there's also saddening aspects of it to realize that there's parts where women are actually not given their rightful place and recognized as the people that they are. So in Southern Africa, actually what's really happening on the ground is what we would like to hear at the moment.
Well, Rose, on the ground, it's very interesting because I think when I say image of the African women, we already see this big mama carrying a big pot on her head and a big baby on her back. And that's exactly what the world perceives a black African woman to be. But in truth, there is that black African woman who is still traditional, who still sees her place in the kitchen. She's subservient, she's submitted to her husband, and they're normally much older. It's like 60s going up. They were brought up like that. The girls, you just did what your mom did. You served in the kitchen. You didn't say anything. It was a men's world.
What a life.
Exactly.
It was a men's
like
world. So that is the traditional woman. And there were high expectations on her. I won't go into too much detail, but as a mother, there were high expectations. As a wife, there was high expectations. Worse as a daughter-in-law. I won't even go into detail. And widow, it's terrible, but all African widows will identify that it's not easy to be black and a widow.
Exactly.
We'll talk about it another time.
Yes.
But that is what a traditional African woman was. Then now we flip the next few generations, the young, the roses of this world.
The young and budding.
Like the girls here, right?
The sisters.
The Afro rising.
Afro chic.
Afro chic. Mine is
Obviously, we have now the successful, professional girls who are free. But the perception of what men think an African new age woman should be is actually a very sexist idea.
Yes.
Because for girls and women, they are viewed as a sex symbol. So we are expected to dress in a certain way. We have to be revealing. Everything is about the men's eye.
Yes.
And there are many women who fall into that trap where they feel that their body, their lives, it's all about attracting and pleasing the men. So the way they will dress, the way they will even portray themselves. There's even this feeling that don't show you're too intelligent. Because guys don't
be
especially African
intimidated.
men.
They'll be intimidated.
Yes, they'll be threatened, they'll be intimidated.
intimidated.
So you portray this certain image, but you're not free. You're not traditional, but you're not yourself. You're not free to express who you are because the man is saying this is how you should be. So for me, the two somehow are still not free women. And of course, I'm not saying that all black women are like that, but generally, this is what Southern Africa is like.
That is quite something, Auntie Zods, and I think it will be a good opportunity to just hear from a woman who is in Zimbabwe. Her name is Sheila, 59 years old. And let's hear, is she traditional, modern, in between, or, I don't know, let's hear what she has to say. Auntie Sheila, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's such a pleasure to have you. And Auntie Sheila, as we're talking about the image of the black African woman, what's the first thing that comes to your mind at the mention of that?
The first thing that crosses my mind is very limited opportunities, disadvantaged in a way, not equal opportunity for education as their male counterparts, and an attitude of society that says the woman should be always in the home, maybe in the kitchen or just in the background, maybe seen but not heard. But what also comes to my mind is the age differences. I now notice that for people of my age, definitely we were very disadvantaged, but for younger generation women, they are better off. They can compete equally with their men in as far as education opportunities, job opportunities, professionalism, and things like that. So Black African woman who was born in the 60s like me has less opportunities to do or to be who they really want to be.
So Anshula, I'll take you back to what you mentioned. People of your age, they had less opportunities. Would you say you are that epitome of that woman that was less privileged as expected by the society and culture?
No, I don't think so, because I've had it good. I think that I've had good opportunity for education and good opportunity to have a decent job and freedom to be whom I really want to be. So in a way I'm different because I'm 59, but I wake up early to go to gym before I go to work. I love to do sports. I love to go out there and change the world. And I think that many women of my age did not have that opportunity. So I cannot say that I'm the epitome of the Black African woman of the 60s. No, not at all, Rose.
Anshula, thank you so much for that. Very clear. I should join you in gym sometime. Hey?
We all like it. I'll be too tired so early in the morning.
And so, taking it back, Mama Audrey, you know, now there's two extremes. There's the traditional aspect, there's the modern aspect, there's confusion. But we want to go back where it all starts, where our reference is, the Bible. All these women in the Bible, were they also expected to have all these things that are happening now in the society?
No, I don't think so. I think that in the Bible days, things were much more simple. And even in the days of the New Testament, things much more simple, because the Christians of the New Testament were not influenced by the world. Mm-hmm. The Christians of the New Testament, they were all in Jesus. They were all for everything they had received from the Lord. It was a newness of life. They were new creations. They were totally separate from the world. In fact, they were persecuted. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have any chance to be part of anything.
Okay.
But unfortunately, again, we are speaking to Christian African women.
Yes, exactly.
We're not speaking to any woman in general. Yes. We do speak, but we are referring to the Christian African woman.
Yeah.
And it's a pity to see that the church has lost direction. Because if we see the state of these women today, and you know, you were talking of the image of the African woman carrying the pots, one baby in the back, and I wanted to add to that, 2 children in the hands, and the husband walking next to them,
carrying nothing,
and pregnant, and the next walking with nothing. Because that's culture. That is culture. And we are not, once we are born again, we are no longer Africans, we are no longer Mauritians, we are no longer Europeans, we should no longer be. Even though we can be African in our taste, in many things, but we are first of all children of a living God. Amen. Peter says very clearly, he says, you have been redeemed from the empty way of life you inherited from your forefathers.
Yes, exactly.
So all this has been passed on from generation to generation, from generation to generation, as being something that we must keep, as being our tradition. This is our inheritance. This is something we must keep and we mustn't lose, because this is our pride. But here Peter is very clear. In 1 Peter 1:18 he says, hey, that's not the way you've been redeemed. You have not been redeemed. There's nothing that you have inherited by your forefathers that you have been keeping. Nothing of this has helped to save you. You have been saved by the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or spot. So if there's anything we must remember as Christian women, we are first of all Christians. We are first of all, we're not Americans and then Christians, or Africans and then Christians. We are Christians. And our identification is Christ. Is nothing to do with whatever we have inherited. And 2 Corinthians says, we are a new creature. All things have passed away. everything have become new.
Exactly.
Where do we get that from? In which cupboard did we go to fetch that? Our identification is not with my forefather, with my father, with my mother. I love them, I respect them. But today, I don't live as they live. I live as Christ is expecting me to live and has asked me and has shown me the way to live.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mama Audrey. Just to highlight something that you've just said there. So basically, the value of a woman with regards to all this topic is our identification with Jesus Christ and nothing else outside of that, what men wants us to be or what tradition wants us to be.
Exactly. I mean, you were talking of the sexist image.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not an object.
Yes.
No,
I'm
you're
not going to allow anybody to use my body to stir themselves for my husband to get pride out of it.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry, I belong
Yeah.
to Jesus,
Yes.
and I'm not going to compromise. My body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. I've got the fear of God in my life, and I'm not going to dance on that music.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to stand my ground for the Lord. Hey, people had to stand their ground up to be beheaded.
To that extent.
I don't know if
I love
it will
my
take a
neck
lot
too much.
this year, this time around.
We're not talking about cheap things here.
Yeah.
Identification to Christ is something very deep.
Yes.
It's something that makes you go very far. I know testimonies of even recently a little girl in India who refused to accept a husband from another who is not a Christian. I mean, she was burnt publicly. Publicly, because she was not going to compromise her faith. Now, why should we now have our body and get our figures changed and whatever to please what, to fit, to conform to what image?
Yes, exactly.
To whose image
That's the
are
question. Whose image?
are we supposed to conform, Jackie?
Exactly. Whose image?
To hold it right there, Mama, when you mention of that, you're saying it's not right for us to follow what is expected. And so because of that, to trying to find our own strength and empowerment over the years, feminism has taken over. Yes. How has that actually taken over in Southern Africa exactly?
I think the feminist movement has really gained a lot of ground, and in a way I must say that they have brought a bit of good, because I'm glad I was not born of that generation. And because of that feminist movement and the government initiatives to empower women, and there are many societies like Black Lives Matter that empower Black women, and just to give them that freedom, to give them a voice, to tell them that no, you don't have to be what society expects you to be. You can be educated. You are free to even do better jobs than a man can. It's very good. But what that has brought now, especially we'll go in the church, is it's brought confusion and a double standard. Because now the women are independent, financially independent, they're very secure in themselves. And then sometimes what you see is women overstepping their authority. Because I'm a manager at work, I've got this important job. So now in the church,
I've got to change cap.
That's it.
I've got to leave my cap when I leave the office, wear one in her home, another
wear the
one
other
in the
one
church.
at home.
Exactly. And you find that it's brought a lot of contention in the church as well as in the home, because now it's equal rights. So he must do what I'm doing. He needs to take care of the kids. He must cook. He must, which obviously men can do that, but it's confused. What is our place? What is the place of a Christian woman who wants to serve the Lord in freedom? So that's feminism has brought a bit of confusion, I think.
I think what needs to be clear as well is that with feminism came the point that we don't want to be brought down. And also at the same time, we don't want to be looked at upon as an object. And so that those two contrasts in a good way, like Auntie Zodza say, it's brought good that women can't be objectified or women can't just be put in a corner, but it's also brought rebellion in the middle. There's no submission.
But I think we must see it in another way as well. When you see that government, when you think that government brought that, if we go at the root of this whole thing, is that United Nations. It's the world. With what has happened with women in the world, they have wanted Africa to catch up. Because Africa was left out in that whole movement. And now that spirit that has been prevailing in Europe, in America, and in all the first world, they're wanting to bring that to Africa now and say, come on girls, We want to emancipate you now. You
rise
can't
up
stay
and
there
wake
where
up.
you
Not
are.
that it's a bad thing, though.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's a
Yeah.
matter of attitude in the spirit of which it's happening. This is something, of course, the Lord, let's say everything in the church is right.
Okay.
We wouldn't have domination from the men. We would have equality of value. We would have respect for one another. But today, what church is going to touch culture?
Yeah.
None will,
Yeah.
because they are petrified to do so.
Yeah.
And most of the African Christian who are supposed to know the Bible, they are still not loving their wives as Jesus loved loves the church,
church, yeah.
because for them the wife is there to serve them.
Yeah.
Is like an object in most cases. It can
most
be
cases,
in
yes.
French Africa, it can
Yeah.
be English Africa. Why? Because I would say like Jackie, why?
Why?
Why? Because the message of the gospel
Yes.
Yes.
has been
Yes.
diluted. The
Yes.
message of the gospel,
What is the message of the gospel that has been diluted?
I mean, the simple gospel of Jesus, the true, pure doctrine of Christ is not there. And it's not being preached. There's so many messages like prosperity, like other things, excellency,
Yes.
many things that
Yes.
have been replacing, has come as a substitute.
Okay.
Because it brings competition. You know, each church must have the best team, the best
Yes.
band, the best
Yes.
this, the best leader, the best everything. And that's not the spirit of the gospel.
Yeah.
That is not. Jesus would like to bring the value, the reality. And I can say that I've seen so many things happen. I've seen in conferences where the gospel has been preached, pastors came and repented and went home to repent to their wives, to say sorry for the way I've treated you, for the way
What I've
I've
expected
I've
from you.
despised you,
Yes.
for the way I didn't even consider you.
Okay.
So it's only the gospel that can, is that mirror that James speaks about, that can bring you face to the reality.
Yes,
So,
yes.
unfortunately, what do we see in the church? The world
Yeah.
So maybe in closing, Mama,
already.
I know it's such. There's so much to be said about this topic, you know. But, Mom, maybe in closing, Mama Audrey, you can then give us an overview of encouraging or some words to just give insight on how, as Christians, we can't be caught up in either stuck in tradition or be fighting for feminism to be heard. But as Christians, there's a difference that needs to be seen. And what can you say about this, Mom?
As Christians, I believe we are free to be who we are. And we are free to express ourselves. But that freedom doesn't come as a principle. It's not a button that we press. It's the working of God in our hearts. The same way the one who thinks he's high, the Lord's going to work in his heart to bring him back to where he should be.
Yeah.
The same way the one who thinks he's low, the Lord's got to build his image back and bring him to
Yes,
what
exactly.
he should be.
Yes.
Not to where he shouldn't be, to
Yes.
where he should be.
Yes.
That doesn't mean I'm not going to respect my husband. That
Yes.
doesn't mean I'm not going to submit to my husband.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that I can't serve the Lord.
Yes.
But as a woman, God has a place for me.
Yes.
In the church,
Yes. Yes.
in my home,
Yes.
as a mother, as a wife, in society. And he's not calling me to take authority, to be the place of authority. I'm where he has called me to be, because this is where I'm protected.
Yes, exactly.
This is where he's got the best place for me. So, but the only way to find that out is through the gospel, through the preaching of the gospel. And this
challenge
is what will
culture.
bring everything back
Back to the
its
balance.
place. And I want to encourage the sisters not to run that race, because you don't feel at peace. There is so much pressure in running the race of the world.
Yes.
We don't have to
Yes.
prove anything. We don't have to be anything. We don't have a conviction. Let us be women of conviction. My husband wants me to be a sexist woman or whatever. I'm sorry, darling. That's not me. This is not in my heart. This is not what the Lord is asking of me.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the husband will probably hear that at home and not in church. But whatever it is, the Holy Spirit will lead us. If we are sensitive to Him, the way we dress, the way we live, the things He wants to bring freedom in our hearts,
Yes.
is faithful.
Yes,
And we
exactly.
can turn to the Holy Spirit, we can trust Him. We don't have to be crushed, We don't have to be elevated.
Yes.
The Lord has a place for us,
Exactly.
and we need to seek to find that place.
Exactly. Mama Audrey, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate your insight. And ladies, thank you for being with us today. And Auntie Sheila, thank you for joining us on the show as well today. And ladies, African women, we're beautiful, we are worthy, and the Lord loves us. Our identification is in Him. So thank you for joining us today on our show, and we hope you will join us again next time. So if you would like to follow us or contact us, please do so on Facebook and YouTube on the link at the bottom of the screen. Till next time, God bless and goodbye.